7 Johnny Carson guests who had shocking meltdowns on live TV. For 30 years, Johnny Carson controlled late-night television with a calm smile and an iron grip. Nothing surprised him. Nothing rattled him. Or so America believed. Because on rare, unforgettable nights, something went terribly wrong. These guests didn't just tell bad jokes. They didn't just miss the vibe. They lost control. Emotionally, mentally, publicly, live on national television. Some came drunk. Some came angry. Some came determined to steal the spotlight and shattered the rules of late night forever. You'll see legends cross invisible lines. You'll watch Johnny Carson struggle, quietly, to regain control. And you'll have to decide for yourself. Were these guests victims of the moment, or did they knowingly sabotage the most powerful couch in television history? Because once you see who snapped and why, you'll never watch late-night TV the same way again. Madonna, when control met provocation. In 1987, The Tonight Show was not a battlefield. It was a temple. Johnny Carson sat behind his desk like a quiet monarch of late-night television. For decades, celebrities came to this couch knowing the rules, even if no one ever said them out loud. Be charming. Be funny. And above all, don't challenge the man behind the desk. Then Madonna walked out. The studio didn't erupt. It froze. Black lace. Fishness. A look that wasn't just confident, it was confrontational. This wasn't a guest arriving for an interview. This was a performer stepping onto a stage she fully intended to dominate. Johnny smiled. He always smiled. But behind the smile, something shifted. Madonna didn't sit with Carson. She sat at him. From the first exchange, she flipped the power dynamic upside down. Where Carson used subtle innuendo, Madonna responded with blunt sexuality. Where he steered toward charm, she pushed toward shock. Every sentence felt like a challenge. How far can I go? How uncomfortable can I make you? And she kept going. The audience laughed, then hesitated, then laughed again, unsure whether they were watching comedy or witnessing a line being crossed in real time. Producers hovered near the delay button. Censors leaned forward. The room held its breath. Johnny tried to regain control the only way he knew how, with humor, with timing, with grace. But this wasn't a misbehaving guest. This was a calculated provocation. Madonna wasn't drunk. She wasn't confused. She knew exactly what she was doing. She flirted harder. She spoke louder. She forced the most unflappable host in America into the unfamiliar role of restraint. For brief moments, Carson's mask slipped. A tight laugh. A sideways glance. A pause that lingered just a second too long. Viewers at home didn't know it yet, but they were watching something rare. Johnny Carson, reacting. Not exploding. Not snapping. But quietly losing control of the rhythm he had perfected over decades. When the segment finally ended, Madonna had won her moment. The headlines followed. The controversy followed. Younger viewers called it iconic. Older viewers called it inappropriate. But behind the scenes, the verdict was already sealed. Johnny wasn't angry. He was disappointed. Because The Tonight Show wasn't a place to conquer. It was a place built on mutual understanding. And Madonna had used it not as a conversation, but as a weapon. She was never invited back. And that's the irony. Madonna walked away louder, bolder, more famous than ever. Johnny Carson walked away with his dignity intact, and his boundaries reinforced. The message was clear, even if no one said it aloud. You could shock America. You could steal the spotlight. But if you shattered the trust of the couch, you'd never sit there again. Don Rickles, when the court jester crossed the throne. For years, Don Rickles was the exception. Every late-night kingdom has rules, but Rickles was allowed to break them. He insulted Johnny Carson mercilessly, mocked the desk, the suit, the network, the man himself. And Johnny loved him for it. The audience did too. Their relationship wasn't just comedy. It was trust. Rickles was the court jester who knew exactly how far he could go. Until one night, he went further than anyone ever had. It started with something small. Almost nothing. Johnny Carson's cigarette box, an elegant, irreplaceable gift from NBC, sat on the desk as it always did. During a casual moment off camera, Rickles sat in Johnny's chair, joking around as he often did. Then the box snapped. No laughter. No punchline. Just a quiet, unmistakable crack. Rickles laughed it off. Johnny didn't make a scene. Professionals don't. But the object mattered, not because it was expensive, but because it symbolized something sacred. This was Johnny's domain. The next night, Johnny addressed it on air. Playful. Controlled. A gentle jab. A humorous complaint. And then, without warning, the doors burst open. Don Rickles stormed onto the set. No introduction. No invitation. No permission. He was dressed in full Navy costume from his sitcom CPO Sharky, shouting, gesturing, exploding with energy like a hurricane that had missed its cue. At first, it was electric. The audience roared. Cameras scrambled. This was unscripted chaos, the kind that usually becomes legend. Rickles fired insults like artillery, grabbed the desk, moved through the set as if it belonged to him. And then, something changed. Johnny was still laughing, but it wasn't the same laugh. Rickles wasn't riffing anymore. He was taking over. The rhythm of the show, Johnny's rhythm, collapsed. Segments dissolved. Timing vanished. Rickles wasn't playing with the format. He was demolishing it. For the first time, America saw something it wasn't supposed to see. Johnny Carson boxed in. He smiled. He nodded. He played along. But behind the eyes was calculation. Not comedy, damage control. How do you stop a friend without humiliating him? How do you end a moment the audience loves but the show cannot survive? Rickles finally left as suddenly as he arrived, the storm passing as violently as it came. The applause was thunderous. The legend was born. But backstage the air was cold. Johnny was furious, not because Rickles had insulted him, but because he had crossed the one line no one was allowed to cross. Control of the show itself. This wasn't rebellion. This was a coup. They remained friends. Johnny never publicly scolded Rickles. But something fundamental shifted. Invitations slowed. Warmth cooled. Trust fractured. Because even the closest friendships have boundaries. And live television has consequences. The lesson was unmistakable. You can insult the king. You can mock the throne. But the moment you try to take it, the kingdom remembers. Oliver Reed, the night alcohol took the wheel. Oliver Reed was never supposed to be safe. By the time he walked onto the Tonight Show stage in 1975, his reputation had already arrived ahead of him. Brilliant actor, magnetic presence, and dangerously unpredictable off-camera. Hollywood tolerated his excess because talent bought forgiveness. But live television is unforgiving. The moment Reed stepped into the light, something felt wrong. His walk was uneven. His eyes didn't focus. And when he sat beside Johnny Carson, the distance between charm and disaster collapsed instantly. The smell of alcohol reached the crew before the first question did. Johnny saw it immediately. Carson had handled difficult guests before, nervous actors, egomaniacs, even mild drunks. This was different. This wasn't a man who'd had a drink. This was a man who had lost command of himself before the cameras ever rolled. Still, Johnny tried. He opened with safe questions. Gentle prompts. A path back to dignity. Reed ignored it. He slurred, rambled, interrupted. His sentences wandered without direction, then suddenly snapped into aggression. One moment charming, the next confrontational. The audience laughed, at first. Then the laughter thinned. This wasn't comedy. It wasn't rebellion. It was deterioration happening in real time. Reed challenged Johnny directly, pushing back on questions, shifting the tone from interview to confrontation. Not clever. Not funny. Just unstable. Carson adjusted again, redirecting, softening, stretching time, anything to prevent the situation from collapsing completely. But alcohol doesn't follow cues. Reed spiraled. Stories dissolved into incoherent tangents. His voice grew louder, his patience thinner. The studio fell into that rarest of late-night atmospheres, uncomfortable silence. For the first time, Johnny Carson wasn't performing. He was calculating. How long can this continue? How do you stop it without destroying the guest? How do you protect the show and the man at the same time? Carson waited for an opening that never came. Finally, he did something almost unheard of. He ended the segment early. No punchline. No flourish. Just a clean-cut mercy disguised as professionalism. The cameras moved on, but the damage was done. Backstage, the verdict was swift and quiet. Let's not do that again. For Oliver Reed, the consequences were brutal. Hollywood had already been hesitant. Now they had proof, recorded, broadcast, undeniable. The Tonight Show was America's front door, and Reed had stumbled through it drunk, belligerent, and exposed. His chances at American stardom died on that couch. The tragedy wasn't that Reed embarrassed himself. It was that everyone could see he didn't mean to. This wasn't sabotage. It was surrender to addiction, to impulse, to a moment that could never be taken back. Johnny Carson didn't humiliate him. He protected him as best he could. But some collapses can't be softened. Some nights leave scars no editing can erase. The message lingered long after the broadcast ended. Talent can excuse a lot. Fame can forgive even more. But on live television, if you lose control of yourself, the world watches you fall. Truman Capote, genius, fading under the lights. Truman Capote didn't walk onto The Tonight Show as just another guest. He arrived as an institution. This was the mind behind In Cold Blood. The voice that once owned New York dinner parties. A man whose words could slice, charm, and devastate in the same sentence. Johnny Carson admired him. Truly, Carson believed late-night television could be more than jokes and movie plugs. With the right guest, it could become conversation, smart, sharp, unforgettable. Capote had once delivered exactly that. But this time, something was wrong. From the moment Capote sat down, the illusion cracked. His movements were erratic. His speech thick and uneven. Thoughts appeared, vanished, then reappeared in distorted form. The wit was still there, buried, but it surfaced only in flashes before sinking again. Johnny leaned in. He slowed the pace, softened his tone, asked questions that once would have unlocked brilliance. He wasn't managing a segment anymore. He was reaching for a man he respected. Capote didn't follow. Instead, he drifted. Politics. Provocation. Statements that felt unfinished, inappropriate, sometimes alarming. Each time Johnny tried to guide him back to safer ground, Capote swerved again, as if resisting the very structure meant to protect him. The audience didn't laugh much. They watched. This wasn't chaos like Oliver Reed. It was something worse. It was erosion. Moments of brilliance still surfaced. A clever phrase, a sharp observation, and for a heartbeat, everyone hoped. Maybe he's back. Maybe this will turn. But the clarity never held. The thoughts collapsed again, slower each time. Behind the cameras, the control room panicked. Carson didn't cut him off. Anyone else in that condition might have been gently removed, the segment shortened, the damage contained. But Johnny stayed. He waited. He hoped. Because this wasn't just a guest unraveling. This was a genius fading in public. The tension wasn't explosive. It was heavy. The kind that sinks into the room and refuses to leave. Viewers weren't uncomfortable because Capote was offensive. They were uncomfortable because he was sad. When the interview finally ended, there was no dramatic exit. No scandal. No walk-off. Just a quiet understanding that something precious had slipped away. Capote was never invited back. Johnny never criticized him. Never joked about the appearance. He protected Capote's dignity in public, even as the footage told a painful truth. For audiences who remembered Capote at his peak, the contrast was devastating. The sharp social observer reduced to fragments. The master of language struggling to hold a sentence together. Live television didn't expose a scandal that night. It exposed mortality. The message was subtle, but devastating. Brilliance doesn't disappear all at once. It fades. And sometimes, the world witnesses the fade in real time. Johnny Carson tried to give Capote one last moment of clarity. It never came. Shelley Winters, when anger took the stage. Shelley Winters never entered a room quietly. She didn't glide into conversations, she claimed them. An Academy Award-winning actress, a survivor of Hollywood's sharpest eras, Winters carried decades of triumph, rejection, and resentment like invisible luggage. And on this night she unpacked all of it, live on The Tonight Show. At first, everything felt familiar. Johnny Carson exchanged light banter, the audience settled into the rhythm, and Shelley's energy read as merely theatrical. Big personality, big stories, nothing new. Until something snapped. The comment, small, almost forgettable, came from the other end of the couch. Another guest. Another voice in the room. But to Shelley Winters, it wasn't a throwaway line. It was a provocation. Her posture changed. Her voice sharpened. And suddenly, the conversation wasn't shared anymore. It was seized. Shelley rose from her seat, pointing, projecting, reclaiming decades of grievances in a single breath. The tirade poured out unchecked, Hollywood's cruelty, the erasure of aging actresses, the disrespect she believed she'd endured for years. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a bit. This was unresolved anger finding a microphone. The audience froze. Late-night television wasn't built for confrontation. It was built for comfort, for bedtime smiles. But Shelley's fury ripped straight through that illusion, turning the couch into a courtroom and the viewers into unwilling witnesses. Johnny tried to intervene. A joke here. A redirect there. A gentle interruption meant to cool the temperature. Nothing worked. Shelley talked louder. Faster. Broader. The rant grew beyond the initial slight, swelling into something deeply personal, deeply emotional, and impossible to contain. Johnny's demeanor shifted. Those who knew him recognized the signs. The note cards shuffled. The glance toward Ed McMahon. The micropauses that meant he was no longer hosting. He was surviving. For one of the few times in his career, Johnny Carson reached for the emergency brake. Let's take a break. Commercial. The nuclear option. When the show returned, Shelley had been calmed, but the damage lingered. The air was heavier. The rhythm broken. The audience applauded, but without enthusiasm. Backstage, Johnny was visibly shaken. He wasn't angry. He understood volatility. He'd built a career managing it. But this was different. This wasn't unpredictability, it was combustion. Shelley Winters would return. Because as disruptive as she was also honest. Human. A force of nature that couldn't be scripted or fully controlled. Carson once described her perfectly. You don't control Shelley Winters. You aim her. That night she wasn't aimed. She was unleashed. The message was complex and uncomfortable. Anger can be justified. Pain can be real. But when it explodes in the wrong place, it doesn't heal, it scars. Late-night television survived the storm. But for a moment, America saw something it rarely did. A woman no longer performing for approval, but demanding to be heard. Buddy Hackett, when laughter gave way to truth. Buddy Hackett was supposed to be safe. He was comfort food for late-night television. A master storyteller. A man whose laughter arrived before the punchline and carried the audience with him wherever he went. When Buddy sat on Johnny Carson's couch, everyone relaxed. This night was supposed to be no different. At first, it wasn't. Buddy leaned back, smiled wide, and began the familiar rhythm. Animated hands, winding setup, playful exaggeration. The audience laughed on cue. Johnny nodded, letting the pro do what he always did best. But then, the tone shifted. Almost imperceptibly. The jokes stretched longer. The laughter thinned. And the stories, once harmless, began to bend toward something heavier. Names slipped out. Not characters. Not bits. Real people. Buddy's voice tightened. The grin faded just enough to notice. What followed wasn't comedy, it was grievance. A list of slights. Executives he didn't trust. Producers he felt betrayed him. A Hollywood he believed smiled in public and stabbed in private. Johnny noticed immediately. This wasn't a bit gone wrong. This was something personal bleeding into the broadcast. Carson tried to steer him back. A gentle question. A soft pivot toward upcoming projects. A lifeline disguised as curiosity. Buddy ignored it. The stories sharpened. The tone darkened. The laughter died. The audience didn't know where to look. This wasn't funny angry. This was wounded angry. The kind that comes from years of swallowing disappointment until it finally demands air. Buddy wasn't performing anymore. He was unloading. Johnny's expression changed from amusement to concern. Not irritation, concern. This was a man he liked, trusted, a regular who knew the rules as well as anyone. And yet here he was, breaking the oldest one of all. Don't use the couch as therapy. Buddy named names. Questioned motives. Painted Hollywood as a machine built on hypocrisy. Every sentence made it harder for Johnny to recover the tone without humiliating him. So Johnny tried something else. He waited. Sometimes people finish their anger. Sometimes they realize, mid-rant, that they've gone too far. Buddy didn't. Finally, Johnny did what he rarely did. He ended the segment early. No confrontation. No scolding. Just a quiet transition to commercial, preserving what dignity he could. Backstage, there was no fury. Just confusion. Johnny reportedly shook his head and said, "Something's eating Buddy." And that was the truth. This wasn't sabotage. It wasn't ego. It was a man who forgot, for a moment, where he was. Buddy Hackett would return in later years. Back to form, back to laughter. But that night remained a reminder that even the funniest people carry weight. And sometimes, under the brightest lights, that weight becomes too heavy to hide. The message wasn't dramatic, but it was powerful. Comedy can mask pain. Success can delay it. But when the mask slips, even laughter can turn uncomfortable. Red Foxx, the walkout that shattered the illusion. Red Foxx didn't come to The Tonight Show as a struggling comedian. He came as a king. By 1975, Sanford and Son had made him a household name. He was loud, fearless, unapologetic, cut from an earlier era of comedy where rules bent around personalities, not the other way around. But television had changed. And no one told Red Foxx. He walked onto the stage confident, relaxed, completely at home. Johnny Carson greeted him warmly. The audience applauded. Everything felt normal. Until Red asked one simple question. "Can I smoke?" It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a setup. It was an assumption. In Red's world, cigarettes were part of the rhythm, off stage, on stage, everywhere. But NBC had drawn a new line. No smoking. Not anymore. Not on camera. Johnny explained it politely, calmly, almost casually. Red didn't hear a policy. He heard disrespect. His body stiffened. His expression hardened. The shift was immediate and unmistakable. What should have been a footnote became a fracture. Johnny laughed lightly, hoping this was a bit. Comedians exaggerated complaints all the time. Red wasn't exaggerating. "I can't do this without a cigarette." Silence. The audience waited for the punchline. It never came. Red stood up. Just like that. No speech. No theatrics. No dramatic build-up. He said he couldn't do the interview and walked off the stage. Johnny Carson sat alone. For a split second, the illusion cracked. The most controlled show in America, suddenly exposed. No chaos. No yelling. Just absence. Johnny recovered instantly. A quick joke. A smooth transition. The professional reflex of a man who had spent decades preparing for the unpredictable. But backstage, the shock was real. This wasn't rebellion. This wasn't meltdown fueled by alcohol or ego. This was pride colliding with policy and losing. Red's team scrambled to explain. A misunderstanding. A generational gap. A habit mistaken for a right. Johnny accepted the explanation publicly. He always took the high road. But something changed. Red would return years later, but the ease was gone. The warmth replaced by careful politeness. Both men remembered that moment. The speed, the finality, the refusal to bend. Because in live television, nothing escalates faster than certainty. Red Foxx didn't yell. He didn't argue. He didn't negotiate. He walked. And in doing so, he created one of the shortest and most unforgettable guest appearances in late-night history. The lesson was stark and unavoidable. Rules evolve. Egos resist. And when neither gives, the camera keeps rolling. These 7 moments weren't just celebrity meltdowns. They were fractures in a perfectly controlled world. Johnny Carson didn't chase chaos. He contained it. And that's why, decades later, these moments still matter. Not because someone lost control, but because for a brief moment, television told the truth. Which guest shocked you the most? Comment below. Like if live TV is better when it's unpredictable. Subscribe for more moments they couldn't edit out.